Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. We're at the Phil Farkov Academy of Linguistic Analysis. It's going to be a wonderful episode today because we're going to be going to Canada. I just realized, someone asked me what about the Canadian newspapers, and we haven't had a look at any Canadian newspapers. I guess because they're next to America, and everyone's interested in what the Americans are saying. No one cares what the Canadians are saying. So that's why I haven't looked at it. I'm from Australia. No one cares what Australians are saying because I'm from Australia and New Zealand's next to it. I've looked at them. But first, before we start, have you noticed something about Canadians that they're all nice? Have you ever met a Canadian who's not nice? I just wanted to say that before I begin because it's kind of weird if you think about it. They're all really nice people. How many people in Canada? 30 million nice people. It'd be great to go there one day. So a big shout out to all the crooks out there. Miss you guys, love you guys. Looking forward to going and visit you one day. Okay, so if you remember in the last video, we had a look at the distance and whether or not that affected how the presence of the news on a front page and how emotionally charged the news was. And I just thought we're going to look at two Canadian newspapers today. And I thought the first thing we could do is just have a look at whether or not it fits into this pattern. So it's pretty much the same as the US. I put Toronto. I don't know where Toronto is. Is it on the West Coast or the East Coast? I suppose it made quite a big difference. New York's on the East Coast, and that was for the US. So it might be slightly inaccurate, but this is a philological faculty. We're not too interested in accuracy when it comes to distances, geographic distances. Okay, so just to refresh your memory of the scoring scale, we have a 0 if it's neutral. There might be news, but it's very factual. Or there's no news at all. That means a 0. It can go into the negative, but we won't worry about that unless it happens. And then if it starts to get a bit emotional, i.e. you feel a bit sad or angry or upset or negative, not positive, but a negative emotion, then it's a 5. So 3 would be kind of emotional, 5 would be quite emotional. And then if you're starting to get a fairly strong emotions, it goes up to the maximum score of 10, which is reptilian. Okay, so I had a discussion with a friend recently, not from Canada, from Britain, and he watched the video about the distance from between the news source and where the news is happening. And he said, what about the political leaning of the newspaper? If it's a conservative newspaper, progressive newspaper, that could also affect the presence of certain types of news and the emotional content of that news. And so I thought today with the Canadian one, the two Canadian newspapers, the first thing we do is just look at the score itself for the Ukraine-Russia war. And then after that, we could have a look at what's the general focus of that front page, just to start to build up this idea of, okay, if it's a left-leaning newspaper, a progressive newspaper, a socialist newspaper, what type of language is it using and what's it talking about? If it creates emotional negativity, who's it against? The conservatives, obviously. And if it's a conservative newspaper, will they be directing that negativity against the left side, the liberal side? And if it's about something that's separate from internal politics, like a war in a faraway place, do they have a different outlook on that? So without further ado, let's look at the first Canadian newspaper in the context of the Russian-Ukrainian war. Now again, this is a sad case. That's one of my friends, the friend I was talking with, pointed out, he used the word, it's quite morose, that it's happening again. There's another war on top of all the wars we've had, and so many people have died, and it's just horrible. He added that it's also nasty or morose and horrible that newspapers seem to be fixated on this to try and get some money or something like that to attract attention, negativity in general. So if you don't like this type of thing, really don't keep watching this video, do something else. Okay, first newspaper. There it is, and I've got to admit I'm quite excited about this because I've had a look at the Toronto Star a couple of times in my life, but have generally ignored Canadian newspapers. So if we look at the main picture, we can see it's not about Ukraine-Russia. Two guys sitting there. To the side, to the right, Melnik, Eugene. That could be a Ukrainian name, but I don't think it's Russia, Ukraine. Lookout Conservatives. So this Toronto Star is a progressive, it's a left-wing newspaper in Canada. And we can see there less oil, more electric cars. Yeah, so we have to scroll down quite a bit until we get to Russia pledged to scale back in Ukraine. So if you remember, when we're looking at our scores of 0 for neutral, 5 for emotional, 10 for reptilian or really emotional, that you start to lose control of your mental faculties, we give a score for the main picture and main headline and multiply it by 5, but if something's not part of that main section, then we give it a score, but we don't multiply it at all. So I'll zoom into that one about Russia. Okay, so the picture itself, it's obviously a war type picture or a training for a war type picture. So when you see that picture, how do you feel? Like, do you feel sad? Do you feel upset? Maybe you feel interested. If you like that type of thing. I made a comment before about Americans. Maybe if you're from a particular part of America, you're going, "Wow, that's cool." But how does it make you feel? And assuming that it does make you feel in some way slightly negative, would you say it's just you're feeling a little bit upset, a little bit angry, like a 2 or a 3, or is it starting to get quite emotional for you? Me personally, when I look at that, obviously in the context of what's happening, it's absolutely horrible. But at the moment they're shooting these pieces of wood. We don't know who they are. Are they Russians or Ukrainians? In fact, they could be anyone. But in the context of war, you're either there's people getting ready to kill other people, so that could trigger a lot of negativity in anyone. But for me, comparing it to the other pictures we saw, like crying girls and buildings bombed and scrap metal and burnt out warehouses and old people being carried, I think this one for a war situation is pretty, I feel fairly calm. So I'm going to give it a 2, just a 2. Because, I'm feeling a little bit negative, but not much. So it's a number. I'll give it a 2. Give that a 2. Okay, and then Russian pledge, which is an interesting word. Pledge is it's a strong promise, pledge. But then you've got to see what is a strong promise. What did they say about that? To scale back, it's a big scale at the moment, a big scale. Would you call this a full-scale war? I commented with someone the other day that it's not a full-scale war, but perhaps you disagree with that. But whatever the scale is, they pledge to scale back in Ukraine. And here it draws skepticism. So straight away, let's think about the language there. Is this a simple sentence or a complex sentence? The actual subject here, Russian pledge to scale back in Ukraine, that subject of the sentence, it begins here with Russian, and there it ends, and then it's got the verb there, draws. And so if you remember when we had a look at the New York Times, it started with very intellectual, intelligent sentences as the main title, but then, like Russian soldiers kill, blah, blah, blah. So it became quite simple and quite emotional. But here we see in this left-leaning newspaper, the Toronto Star, that it's still fairly sophisticated language. If you were like a B1 intermediate learner, you'd be struggling with this. You're going to pledge, what's that? Scale back, what's that? Draws, what draw a picture, skepticism. So I think draw skepticism, it is emotional because it's an opinion. Draw skepticism, like from who's skeptical about this. We don't know. The right type of people, are skeptical about this. That's all we need to know. So I don't think it's very informative. We don't know who it's drawing skepticism from. And then a bit straight away we just see Zelensky said. But if one person says it, draw skepticism from Zelensky, that would be informative. But here we're left guessing. Is it just from Zelensky? Is it from anyone else? So I will give it a 2, even though it doesn't seem to be that negative, because of that emotional content, the skepticism. Should we take the picture into account when giving that score? Probably yes, but I don't know. I'm going to choose not to. So all up we get a 4. And if you remember, there's no multiplication factor. And if we look at the things around, like there's nothing here. Like what I would do before was say that one's a 4, that one's a 2, that one's a 6. Therefore the average is 3. I hope that's right. Is that right? No, the average is 4. Okay. But here, if we actually did that, the average would be very low because there's nothing there at all. So I'll leave it as it is because we've also got Central Ukraine refugees, bombed out buildings. It's difficult to see that picture, it's so small. Yeah, so a 4, we'll leave it as a 4 for the Toronto Star. And I'm sorry, Conservative Canada, but I'm going to be a philologist, a lazy philologist. I'm not worried about that. We'll give it a 4. And so a quick look at the distance, right? You can see that Toronto is closer to Kiev than the US, which means that it should be more emotional, but 4, it's quite low. So we can see here that England and the US seem to have unreasonably large scores given their geographic distance in comparison with those around them. And that's where you can start thinking, okay, why is it that the England and the US seem to, and I'm saying seem to, you've got to keep looking at this and looking at this, seem to have higher scores relative to their geographic proximity. And you can guess maybe it's because it's the English-speaking way, but then what about Australia, New Zealand, and Canada? You could say, well, maybe it's because of their history, their influence at the moment, their political relationships with the countries involved. It's quite interesting thinking about the why. We don't talk about the why at the Philfuck Academy because we'll let you come up with that. We're just looking at the what is being created and the how, and you can think about the why, which is quite interesting. Okay, so that was the Liberal newspaper. Let's have a look at the Conservative newspaper. So there it is, the Conservative newspaper, and you can see that the big photo here is again not related to what's happening in Eastern Europe. You know, possibly surprising for some, unsurprising for others. It's about Canadian assets. By authoritarian states, which is interesting. I assume this has been triggered by the Russia situation. It's considered by some or by most, I suppose, in Canada to be an authoritarian state. Very intellectual investments in Canadian assets by authoritarian states, that's a passive structure in a nominalized clause, should, not must, but should trigger national security review. So just a review and nothing more. So a very complex sentence, very complex idea, and very complex process. This is just like a country mile apart from what you see on the front of the New York Times and the Guardian. You know, like maybe that's why Canadians are so nice, because they're intelligent. I'm sorry, non-Canadians. I'm sorry. I'm just joking. What's the small print? That's quite interesting. Is Russia anywhere? Okay, we've zoomed in. The industry minister's decision, again, this long subject, not to launch a formal national security review over the sale of neoliberalism in China, led. There's the verb. Look at that, man. Look at that. Cheers up to conservative Canada, right-leaning Canada. You guys like your long subjects. Well done. Yeah, and there it is. It's China, which, you know, if in the context of Russia invading its neighboring state and, you know, putting the world on the edge of World War III, you know, it would be reasonable to believe. You know, you may not believe that, but it's reasonable to believe that. I think it's you know, it's kind of weird that China's there, but we don't know the background. Maybe Canada has like really bad relations with China, and China's done bad things too. We don't know, but it's led to controversy in January. Okay, so we can see that there's nothing about Russia. It's actually about China. Now, this is where I was talking about negative scores. I just kind of feel that if you're creating negativity about one thing, but all of a sudden someone's kind of creating negativity about something else, it's like kind of pointing the finger away. So it's not even being neutral. It's pointing the finger away from that negativity. So, you know, fun fact, when the Secretary of State under Donald Trump was being nominated, he had to stand in front of the Senate Review Committee to be accepted. And they asked him, what about your ties to Russia? And almost the first word he said was China, to try and steer away from the conversation about Russia. So, you know, we'll give that a -1. There's the minus because it's going away. It's going away from creating negativity around the noun Russia or adjective Russian. And so that one there, there's nothing in there. It's all very formal. So it comes out at -4. What about the surrounding stuff? Not connected, not connected, not connected, not connected. There is a little bit up the top here. I'm not sure what to do. The battle for your toilet paper is on. The battle for your toilet paper. That's fascinating. We're not going to look at it. Donald Trump, very modest Donald Trump, humbly explains. Can you wait? Sorry, guys. I know this is off topic, but look at the language. Like, have you ever seen the adjectives? Like, very modest Donald Trump humbly explains how he hit a hole-in-one. It's 100% true. It's so important. The toilet paper, and is it true that very modest and humble Donald Trump got a hole-in-one? Okay, and then next to it, we have got like a Russian-Ukrainian article. Ukrainian serviceman, so we've got the adjective there, who told Russian warship, bang, there it is, the contrast. Go f yourself. Ooh, antagonism, yeah. Awarded after being taken as prisoner. So, okay, he's received an award for being taken prisoner and saying, go f yourself. Okay, yeah, I'd say that's creating quite a bit of negativity. Is it in a big spot with that picture there? I don't know. Like, how about let's just cancel? Let's just cancel that one there. Because I think, I don't know, what about you guys? Like, when you look at that, does that one to the right attract your attention? It's going to be difficult to go past Donald Trump. So, I don't know. I think it'd be the wrong idea to give it too much focus. But the negativity, I would say, is a 4. How about we say that cancels out the main picture -4. So we end up, you know, I'll just clear away all the junk. We end up with a 0. I don't know. Guys, have a think about that. You know, coming back to the scoring system, 0 is neutral. The minus if it's pointing to another negative character. 5 being quite emotional, sad, upset, and 10 reptilian, like, oh, yep, your emotions are really, really getting control of you. What would you give that picture? Currently, no one's writing in the comments below, but let's be positive and say, please feel free to leave your opinion in the comments down below. Cool. So I think what I want to do now is we've seen that we had 0 for that newspaper, the conservative one, -4 for the, oh wait, no, 0 for this one here, and the progressive one was, 4. So let's chuck that in there, like a 4 and a 0, averaging out at 2. So maybe I should put that in brackets. I'll put a 2. I'm not going to be lazy. There we go. We've got a 2 because of 4 and 0. But what I want to have a quick look now in the next 5 minutes, that's the end of it for Russia-Ukraine, but it'll be interesting to see what the focus is on. Like we did see that one of them, the focus was on China, the noun China, the main story, the conservative one. Let's go back to the liberal, the progressive one, and see what the focus of the main stories there was. Like, are they raising negativity about anyone? If yes, who? So it's difficult to say, like we can look at without any context. City Union is rocked by president's resignation. Call for probe, so rocked, it's very emotional, but is it creating negativity? There's nothing there that's negative, but maybe from previous days' context. But that's interesting, like when you don't have the full context, how does that affect the score? The next one there, she's trilingual, has a PhD in work experience, but getting a job in Canada was an ordeal. What's wrong with this picture? Yeah, so you can see progressive, you're talking about a she, which probably means it's a female, PhD, highly educated, with experience, but she can't get a job in Canada. She might be a philologist. Okay, tax hikes, well, I mean, that's negative, isn't it? No matter where you are. 4 largest, yeah, there's nothing really there about anyone. But if we come down here into federal politics, and then we can start to see the negativity you might expect. Would a conservative prime minister, so this is the progressive, the left newspaper, conservatives on the right, so would a conservative, would a conservative prime minister kill the Liberals' climate plan? So there you go, that's wonderful. And the language is quite simple. Hypothetical question, would a Conservative president kill the Liberals' climate plan? So a bit of negativity about the Conservatives there, isn't it? Like that would be like a +4. Okay, that would be pretty strong. Maybe, as hopefully this war just goes away, like all wars. I think, everyone just wants war to end. And when it does, we can look at negativity in a slightly less or much less negative context of politics. Although, if it kills the Liberals' climate plan and they start to suffer, they might get to negative, and that virus that's inside might start to grow, and who knows what's going to happen. Okay, what else is there? Let's have a look at to the right. And here we have it. Look out, Conservatives. Look out, Conservatives. Big government is back, and Canadians like it. So that's kind of really directed straight. Look out, Conservatives. Haha. Again, it's quite emotional, isn't it? Like maybe it makes you feel happy because, look out, Conservatives. But it's a kind of negative, aggressive emotion. So I'm going to put it in the negative one, even if you feel wonderful. Yeah, get those Conservatives. Wonderful stuff, isn't it? So +3. So you can see there's some, some negative content there about the Conservatives. What about in the Conservative newspaper? Are they being negative on the right about people on the left? So at the top there, we didn't see anything at all about internal politics or anything like that. Spiking prices, home taxes are going up, prices are spiking. Goodness me. Donald Trump again. Israel shooting, not related. This is quite interesting. Like that's what we're looking at. Israel shooting leaves. 5 dead. So that's quite interesting. That's a very interesting structure. We know that this happened. We can guess this happened. We can be sure this happened in Israel. It's a shooting in Israel that leaves 5 dead, but we have no idea who the actors are. So that's a very passive structure. If we're rating that, we'd say it's negative, like 5 days and after 5 dead after a spate of terror attacks. But yeah, it's kind of, we don't know where to direct that emotion. So I think that's a very good example of where you do have emotion. And a spate of terror attacks, if it is a terror attack, as you would believe it to be, then that's the non-emotional word that we use. Spate of, if it's boom, boom, boom. So yeah, tough decision, but interesting that it has bad news in it, but it doesn't direct it anywhere. No, there's nothing there. There we go. Conservatives reject. Oh, there it is. Reject Liberal climate plan. say they back. Well, there's nothing that negative. They just reject the plan. Okay. So, guys, I hope you enjoyed that. And you can see that it doesn't have to be about war. You can have a look, and we will have a look at a range of issues to see how people create stories. And I think because this is so far away from the Ukraine, we can't really see, okay, is a conservative Canadian newspaper, is it more focused on the Ukraine than a liberal one there? But we can see that the liberal one did seem to be creating more negativity about the conservatives than the conservatives did about the liberals, and the conservatives seem to be more focused on Donald Trump than they were on the Ukraine. It's quite interesting. So I hope you enjoyed that episode, guys. Have a great day. Look forward to catching up in the next one.